Sir Dudley de Chair and Sir Philip Game. One was a senior Royal Navy officer and the other a Royal Air Force commander. Both served as governors for New South Wales and had their portraits looming in the halls of Government House, and both took on Premier Jack Lang. De Chair won round 1. Now let's see how the game was played. G'day everyone and welcome back to the third and final part of episode 3 of a tour guide's tour of Australia, Rise and Fall of Premier Jack Lang. This has been a hell of a ride. Now I'm going to hand you back to Matt Lange to see what happens when he fights back against the Commonwealth.
After that whole fiasco on the bridge, and once again Jack Lang getting showed up by that Irishman, Captain Francis de Groot, he didn't get any time to rest because now his new fight wasn't the New Guard, it was back over to the Commonwealth government. Now, of course, the Enforcement Act of trying to get funds from New South Wales was in the courts at this time, but the Commonwealth decided, no, let's try and get some money back before the ruling comes through the courts. So they decided the income tax and all the money that comes from the income of New South Wales should then go straight to the Commonwealth. That isn't enforced yet. So that ruling came down, and Jack Lang, this time round, instead of deciding to try and fight it in the courts, whether or not it's legal, because he clearly could see where the winds were changing on that, he decided the best way to stop them from getting any money is physically stopping them from getting any money. So all of the tax officers of New South Wales were ordered to change the locks to the buildings so that the feds couldn't actually physically get it.
Yeah.
That stopped them for a day. But I do like the mindset, because the next thing that happened on the 13th of April, just before the courts ruled in the Commonwealth's favour to withdraw funds from the banks of New South Wales to the Commonwealth, Jack Lang then ordered the public servants of New South Wales to also withdraw the funds from the New South Wales banks, but instead of giving it to the Commonwealth, they would literally store it in the Treasury building. So I would like you to imagine that scene in The Dark Knight, the Batman movie, with the Joker sliding down a pile of cash. That was the Treasury building of New South Wales. There was just this big pile of cash that they've moved physically in suitcases. So these are the old-fashioned suitcases that you carry as well, all in small denominations, so like £20 notes and stuff. And it was actually hauled onto the back of a truck, which was then flanked by New South Wales Police armed with rifles to then be transported to the Treasury. And then from that moment, on the 13th of April, for a few weeks, the entire economy of New South Wales was paper-based. So if you were paid by the New South Wales government at this point, you would have to line up out front of the Treasury building and get physically paid like you would in the very old days.
Wow.
So you couldn't use a bank or anything like that because they were trying to basically circumvent it.
Yeah. Wow.
As you can imagine, is that legal? I would imagine not, right? At this point, a lot of people in New South Wales, a lot of judges, a lot of important people were yelling at the governor saying, how is this legal? You should do something. You should use the reserve powers of the governor of New South Wales to dismiss the the government of that day, with Lang and it included. Now, Sir Philip Game was very reluctant to use the reserve powers, because the thing about the reserve powers is that they're unwritten rules. So there are no rules, essentially, for using reserve powers, and there's no instructions. So once reserve powers is enacted, you can do nearly anything, really. Now, in this particular case, it was just, of course, whether or not it should be to dissolve the government of the day and then appoint someone else. So he was still very reluctant to use it, and he wanted to seek advice. Now, traditionally, of course, the governor needs to seek advice from the Premier and the ministers. But they're the ones causing the issues, so who do you seek advice to? Well, naturally, it is the big bosses back home in the United Kingdom. So he sent dispatches basically requesting instructions and asking what he should do. Interestingly, their reply, very typically whatever happens in our history, the Brits go, just stay the course. Don't dismiss him yet. Let the courts figure it out. Let the governments fight it out amongst themselves. Just be there, essentially. Now, interestingly, that was the reply, but that didn't actually end up back in Sydney before Sir Philip Game actually had to make a decision. So in the end, they still supported his decision, but it came a bit too late with staying the course. So eventually, on the 13th of May, 1932, Sir Philip Game also sought advice from the Premier himself whether or not the actions that he's just done to remove the funds is legal. So he's called down to Government House, Sydney. He's here in the main hall, as you could imagine, and they have a meeting and essentially goes, okay, I know what you've done, but also can you advise if this is legal? Jack Lang then replies going, well, it is a cabinet or ministerial decision and we will not be reversing it. He also never advised whether or not it is a legal action that he has taken in, but nonetheless, he's not going to reverse his decision. So Sir Philip Game then gives an ultimatum saying, well, if that's the case, I believe is actually illegal, and if you don't reverse it, I will have to dismiss you and the government. Now, it's an interesting point at this time because it's now well known that the day before, Jack Lang was kind of getting wind. It's not a sudden thing that a governor's going to dismiss you. It takes a while for it to happen. And so a lot of whispers around the halls of Parliament and what have you has already been saying that the governor's going to dismiss Lang. So Lang's decision was to then beat the bull at the charge and essentially prevent the governor from dismissing him by simply arresting the governor. So there was a possibility that Lang would order the New South Wales police to go down to Government House and physically arrest the governor so he could not dismiss Lang. Now, the Commonwealth Army at that time was in charge of protecting Government House, and they had been put on full alert. And there was a very severe possibility that they had orders to open fire on any New South Wales police to come down. And there could have been an actual skirmish and possibly a start of a civil war. Because, of course, our good old friends, the New Guard, if, again, it was kind of well known that there was a plan to prevent the governor. So if that was going to happen, if the governor was prevented, they would then do their next plan, which was to then again storm Parliament House and take it over again in the name of the governor. Crazy stuff. Fortunately, Lang never gave that order. And the rest is, as they say, history. But yeah, so they got called down to Government House. They had their chat. Ultimatum was given. Jack Lang didn't back down. And so, in the afternoon of the 13th of May, 1932, Sir Philip Game dispatched out to Jack Lang that he was now dismissed as Premier, and the ministry was then dissolved. So then who do you become Premier? Who's the next person in line? Well, naturally, that's the opposition leader, the second largest group in Parliament, and that happened to be the United Australia Party. That's a very interesting title again. Not Clive Palmer, but in fact, Bertram Stevens. He was the leader of the opposition at that time. So he was appointed Premier. He then formed a ministry or a government very, very quickly. And then in 2 weeks after he was appointed Premier, he called an election. So this is kind of setting the precedence for all other dismissals in history of Australia, that election is immediately called because the appointment of the opposition is, quite frankly, undemocratic. They're the second largest group. So anyway, there was that very slight, terrifying opportunity or possibility that Jack Lang could still be again elected as majority leader or, you know, in the lower house and then come back as Premier. So what's going to happen then? Well, we never find out because in that case, there was a landslide of loss of votes against Lang. So he basically made the Lang Labor, as well as they had fractioned, quite minority.
Yeah, right.
So he never came back. So there you go. So all that. As soon as Bertram Stevens was officially the Premier of New South Wales as well, he basically kept paying. He just immediately did the Melbourne plan and paid all the compensation, everything Jack Lang fought for 2 or 3 years had just been wiped away within a week.
Right.
Yeah, amazing.
Wow.
Different type of history then. Tumultuous and a week.
Right.
Yeah, amazing.
Wow.
Different type of history then. Tumultuous. And you could also see that it was that sort of time period where, it's that sort of forward thinking, but also needed to be sort of radical in a way because
to get things done. Because otherwise it stays in the same stagnant position.
And as we know in our contemporary look back on it, like with 2020 vision, we know that cutting funding and cutting public works and everything like that actually exacerbates the issue.
Yeah.
You need to keep funding. And so if he was the only voice in it, he was going to make sure that's what was going to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah. Wow, how he did it. Interesting.
It's a tale to say the least. He had the right intentions.
Yeah.
Went about it in a unique way.
A way that we can tell a story about.
That you can tell a story about now.
Absolutely.
But it was going to work in his mind. He had the foresight for what New South Wales should and could be at the time, but then obviously, couldn't control or hold on to it as long as he could.
Absolutely. Now, he, of course, didn't just give up there. He then converted to federal parliament. So he was then a member for many, many years, a Labor member, trying to get back into that sort of ability to change Australia in his mind, the better, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, so he didn't take it down lightly.
No.
As absolutely. But I always have I have a quote here from Sir Philip Game, because you might think this was quite an easy decision to make because it's black and white illegal. But he actually saw a lot of the values that Lang was fighting for. Again, like we just said, like maybe not the best way of getting around it, but he definitely saw the value in it. So this was actually from a letter that he sent to his mother-in-law about 2 months after the dismissal. Still, with all his faults of omissions and commission, I had and still have a personal liking for Lang and a great deal of sympathy for his ideals, and I did not at all relish being forced to dismiss him. But I felt faced with the alternative of doing so or reducing the job of governor all over the empire to a farce. So it basically shows that his decision wasn't just one of constitutional integrity, but also validating the role and position of the governor itself. Yeah.
The respect and the honour for that position, the duty that he had to show for that position,
absolutely,
for what he was holding, couldn't outweigh the personal feelings of himself.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Which I guess kind of is shown when he was by Lang's side when he was able to cut the ribbon. It's like, he's in all rights to cut this. So there's a bit of support there from his own side, even though this conflict was going behind the scenes.
And that to me personally, I don't know what others feel about that, but I feel it's also comforting.
Yes.
That he knew that, as you said, duty, it was to protect or to make sure it wasn't going to get worse for the people of New South Wales. He was trying to be that safeguard. But he wasn't just using it because in history, which happens later, it's more or less cut and dry, as you could imagine, with the other dismissal.
Well, I guess with the brink of the Civil War, had he been arrested without the New Guard's interference, it would have just gone peacefully. Yeah, no worries. Handcuffs on. Right, we'll play this out and see how this goes.
Yeah.
But there was that tension of the New Guard just to, we don't want this. We want what we want at any cost.
Yeah. And they need an excuse.
They need an excuse. Any kind of excuse, any kind of rock kicked, stick falling.
Because they weren't even just, so from the story there as well, they weren't even just, they weren't waiting for Lang to do something. They were active, very, very active. They were basically having brawls with communist supporters and stuff, or who they deemed communist supporters. So they were very prominent. They were very in your face. But as soon as Lang's dismissal happened, the actual New Guard and their initial sort of focus dissipated.
Right.
So all the